So I had this realization the other day about the old masters. I sort of cracked the code and uncovered the secret of how they got so goddamn good at drawing. And really, it's so simple, and it's been out there for centuries, actually. In fact, one of the greatest artists of all time, Michelangelo Buonarroti, wrote that secret down and shared it with one of his students, accidentally preserving it for posterity. To his pupil, Michelangelo wrote, "Draw, Antonio, draw, and don't waste time." It's really that simple. Drawing is a craft, and like many things, a good understanding of its principles and a healthy amount of practice yields excellence. We tend to focus on the big names, and so it's easy to think that excellence in drawing comes down to genius or innate talent, but many of these great artists worked alongside skilled apprentices and collaborators in their studios, often dozens in some cases. And a cursory glance at any decent museum or art gallery's drawing collection will reveal incredible works done by tons of artists you've never even heard of before. I'm willing to bet that at least some of these skilled craftsmen started from zero and progressed to proficiency through hard work and a keen understanding of artistic principles and techniques. So if they could do it, why can't I? And if I can, now, I think it's important to define exactly what it is that I and many budding artists are probably aiming for when they ask, how can I draw like the old masters? The term old masters itself has become a bit loaded and bogged down by both academic dogma and popular misconception. Generally, we think of the old masters as a group of painters, primarily, who existed between the nebulous early Renaissance through to the early to mid 1800s. And sure, that's fine as a shorthand in your first year art history course, but it honestly leaves a lot on the table. Are we going to ignore the sculptors, the printmakers, the goldsmiths and jewelers, people doing tapestries? You also have to keep in mind that the earlier old masters were drawing upon the great works of antiquity for inspiration and technique, which begs the question, shouldn't we extend the concept of old masters back even further? Surely, the sculptor of the Apollo Belvedere should be considered an old master, or the many artists who decorated the villas of Pompeii with sumptuous frescoes. What about the artists who created the radiant mosaics at Sant'Apollinare or San Vitale? Or what about the French academic artists who endured into the late 1800s and early 1900s? A lot of time has passed since then, and they certainly outclass many of us walking around today. So again, what do we mean by old masters? I think in terms of our artistic practices, the better question is to ask, which style or period do you like and want to emulate? For me, the drawings of artists from the High Renaissance through to the end of the Baroque period are what I really want to emulate. I'd say roughly from the holy trinity of Raphael, Da Vinci, and Michelangelo through to Watteau and Poussin. For me, I really love drawing in sanguine and chalks generally, and I especially love drawings that use line instead of value as their primary way of conveying form, both of which are things that were really perfected during the Renaissance and the Baroque. So that kind of defines who my old masters are. Your old masters may be something entirely different. It's more important really to understand what you're trying to achieve and then dig into their historical practices and techniques to better inform your modern practice. Now we're going to get into the meat of the video, so if you stuck it out so far, congratulations, you have a healthy attention span. In trying to teach myself how to draw like the old masters that I admire, there are a few things I'm trying to keep in mind. Let's call them the pillars or the fundamentals. What medium were they working in and how are they working it? How did these artists learn to work in that medium? And what are the practical techniques they used to create their images? And finally, what are the modern materials and approaches that I can apply to the craft of the old masters? The first point is fairly obvious. I can pull up a Rubens drawing of the Belvedere torso on the Met's website and get all the specs I need. I can see it's done in red chalk or sanguine on lightly toned paper, and if I zoom in, I can see that Rubens mostly used line to sculpt out the form of the figure instead of heavy blending. If I want to do a drawing like that, I know what that entails in the most literal sense. Jumping ahead to the third point, I think it's important to stress that while it's okay to emulate materials and want to be as close to an artist's historical practice as possible, you don't want to obsess over this point because it's often an unreasonable expectation to set. Good red chalk like that used by Rubens is no longer available for the most part, and I'm not going to hold off on drawing until I can mine a vein of the stuff myself. Likewise, I probably can't replicate the exact texture and weave of the paper that Rubens was drawing on, so I'm not going to sweat it too much either. There are some decent modern alternatives to Sanguine, such as this pencil by Koh-i-Noor, and Strathmore makes these relatively affordable sketch pads with tan-toned paper. You can worry about historical accuracy and really nerd out on this stuff later when you've got the basics of your craft sorted out. Now, the most important point or pillar here is identifying how the artists you want to emulate trained in their crafts and what the tricks of the trade were at the time. And going beyond that, you need to know how to reproduce those methods and practices in a way that's practical in the modern day. Looking at the artists of the High Renaissance and the Baroque era, they tended to join an established artist studio and would begin their training by making copies of whatever the master put in front of them. Typically the master's own work, but also things like model books and later on prints of other artists' works. The master would assess their work, teach them how to correct their mistakes, and once they were deemed good enough, they would often assist their master by executing smaller parts of pieces, such as background characters and, foliage. In the Baroque era, it was also quite common for young artists to go on something of a grand tour and take great pains to draw the things they saw en route and connect with the great artists of the day wherever they were traveling to learn from them too. In any case, copying was the emphasis. Some drawing from the model would be done, but more so as part of an active commission or in self-directed study. It's likely that a master would also encourage his pupils to draw from a sitter while the master himself was drawing or painting from the model at that time. And as artists became more sophisticated and respected in society, aka wealthier, they would also bring in antiquities and collect other works of art, and doubtless have those available for their students to draw from as well. Really, transmission of the master's style was the focus above all else. You can see this, for example, in the works of Leonardo da Vinci. If we compare this drawing of a woman with braided hair by Andrea del Verrocchio, Da Vinci's master, with any of Leonardo's portrait drawings of women, you can see Verrocchio's hand. And while Leonardo's own style would eventually mature beyond Verrocchio, the hours he spent copying the elder artist's work had the intended effect. For me then, a lot of copying is in order. Thankfully, I have plenty of books on the High Renaissance to reference, and more on the way to cover later artists such as Rubens and Bernini. However, in keeping with the spirit of emulating the past where it makes sense, I'm not going to stick completely with doing master copies or sketches of antiquities as part of my training. That approach got me where I am so far, but I feel like it only ever makes you a decent copyist if you stop there. It's important to look at different points in history and consider what they may have actually done better at that time. For example, while I feel like there were some excesses with the French academic style and the later atelier system that grew out of it, there's an argument that they actually had one thing figured out even better than the Italian Renaissance masters. The French academics understood the value of drawing from the live model in a very technical and sustained manner, and their insistence on perfecting drawing before ever picking up a paintbrush was, well, a stroke of genius. Now, I'm not going to spend 12 plus hours fiddling with charcoal and laboring over one singular drawing for that long, but taking a slower, more deliberate approach to measurement, construction, and establishing value with the materials I want to use, yeah, sure. I'm all in for that. And, a healthy dose of drawing from a live model especially forces you to think on the fly and use the lessons you learn from the masters you've been copying, rather than trying to painstakingly reproduce the exact marks that they made. So now that I've laid out my thought process in fairly comprehensive detail, it's time to look at how I'm actually going to structure my practice to reach the level of mastery that I'm aiming for. And really, what I need to do should be pretty obvious if you've been paying attention this whole time. First and foremost, I've defined what I want to accomplish, and I've set some rough parameters. I want to draw like the masters of the High Renaissance and Baroque era, and I want to be as true to their materials as I practically can while living in 2026. Next, I've identified the core components of what I need to study and drill. Master copies are going to form the core of what I'm going to do early on. I need to take the works by the artists I admire and copy them in a precise and analytical way, focusing more on understanding their decisions and idiosyncrasies rather than just trying to finish something to have it, look good. Stopping routinely through these exercises to ask, why did they do it that way, is going to be of the utmost importance here. Next up is drawing from the inanimate. While I don't have a collection of casts or antiquities myself, I can visit museums, public parks, and some private collections to copy from 3D forms that don't move, and accurately draw and properly render form and volume through repeated drilling of the process. And in this case, I am going to lean in on the French academic method a little bit and really focus on the mechanics of drawing while taking more time to work out each piece. If I get one done in the course of a visit anywhere, then that's fine, as long as it's executed well. Then there's drawing from the model. I am going to attend life drawing classes as much as possible, probably at the cost of my social life, but honestly, it is the best way to learn anatomy and apply the skills that I've learned from drawing inanimate objects in a more time-sensitive environment. This is also where I'm going to start applying some of the shorthand that I've picked up from my master copies, and hopefully start developing functional shorthands of my own instead of, bad shortcuts. I'll probably take a course at some point in the near future too, just so I have a trained artist on hand to kind of correct any major mistakes I'm making at the time. On top of all the actual drawing I'm going to do, I'm also going to set aside some time every week to read up on theory, practice, and the historical record. I want to understand how the old masters saw the world and how the challenges of their day may have actually shaped the way they practiced their craft. There are plenty of modern tomes to read from too, and I'll check these to see if there are some areas we've maybe surpassed the old masters in. After all, there is no need to be dogmatic about this kind of stuff. And finally, through the whole process, I'm going to try to emulate the materials used by the old masters as much as my wallet and modern reality allow me to. I'm also going to take a few detours here and there, just like Da Vinci and Dürer did, for example. So while I'm mostly looking to draw in red and black chalk on green paper, I'll try out blue tone paper every now and then, maybe a little bit of pen and ink. Whatever I do, I'm just going to be as practical as I can in it, such as using, cheap manila paper for my life drawing classes, because hey, it's tone enough, and avoiding anything that requires too much prep, like trying to hand tint my own blue paper. Happy to just buy it as is. As far as timing goes, I'm going to put my nose to the grindstone, honestly, for the balance of the year, mostly because I want to push myself to a good standard of craft as soon as humanly possible. I'll also adjust my practice as needed, probably after having a few critiques with contemporary artists that I do respect, and obviously all of you too. The important thing, of course, is to make progress, but not kind of rush and then force myself to start making mistakes all over again. I want to do it as quickly as I can, but also as right as I possibly can too.